Hey everyone, Smarty here. I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the patch notes that are coming out in a few hours from this video. So, I should give some historical context in case people are watching this in the future for some stupid reason. But currently, in Duelyst II, we're in a very proactive metagame. We've just had, well, kind of, we've just had the first wave of the Timeless Beginnings expansion, which has promoted a lot of non-conventional strategies compared to what Duelist 2 had been for the last year or so, which was largely a mid-range metagame with brief spurts of Songhai doing ridiculous things. Um, yeah, I mean, let's get into it. So, we're looking for, and I've seen this patch notes. This isn't a live reaction or anything, but I think the expectations going in were that walls would get hit in some way because it was an exceptionally powerful deck. Fatigue Magma wasn't necessarily a power outlier, but was exceptionally frustrating to play against, and so people were hoping for something to do with that, and then a lot of other archetypes, they're sort of fair versions, like mid-range Lionar was kind of dead. And, well, mid-range Lionar is not the most popular deck, given its sort of historical dominance over the metagame. Some people, not naming any names, were quite keen on it coming back. So, yeah, let's have a look. So the first change we're going to talk about is Blazing Spines, which is going from a 1 mana spell that makes two 3/1s that can't move to a 2 mana spell that makes two 2/3s. So 2/3 is a better stat line than 3/1. This is less true on walls because basically they can't move, so not being able to kill like a 2/3 with only one Blazing Spine is kind of awkward. But they are tougher. They survive AoE, and they're 2 mana, which really slows down a lot of walls' like really ridiculous openings. Whereas player one, you could go like Blazing Spines, Mementos, Snow Chaser, or similar. As player two, you could play Blazing Spines or Mementos to steal the mana tile that the opponent had headed towards, and then play a Fenrir or whatever. And now that's less accessible, although still doable. Just like a slightly higher roll. Walls is doing this to people less consistently. I think Blazing Spines probably still stays in the deck, especially Lady Lock versions, where they become 3/4s, which is a kind of incredible stat line compared to the 4/2s they were before. Although the mana cost is an exceptional hike in lock scenarios. So I think it's worse. I think it'll probably still see play, and it'll really change the way people have to interact with walls in the early game, which is good because walls being so nasty early on really pushed out a lot of the slower decks that might have been able to fight things like Fatigue Magma, because if you didn't show up ready to clear a tide of X1s, you were just in so much trouble. Blazehound. So Blazehound used to be 3 mana. This card costs 2 less to play if the enemy general took damage this turn, and now it's costs 1 less to play. So this is a revert in the Timeless Beginnings patch, I think. Blazehound was buffed, and now it's been reverted because it turns out that a 1 mana 4/3 is really strong. It was also enabling a lot of very powerful aggressive decks. Lots of Walls decks were playing it. It was very strong with Spirit of the Wild, working alongside Blazing Spines for really fast lethals. And just like every aggressive deck was really playing Blazehound, and you could really feel the difference between a game where they had 2 Blazehounds on like turn 3 versus none. And so I kind of like it going away just because it was quite a high roll powered card, effectively. Um, this will hurt aggressive decks quite a bit, but um, I mean, we've seen historically they've generally been able to fight through that, at least sort of somewhat. And yeah, Blazehound's probably not seeing any play anymore, but it was fun while you were here, and I'm not super sad to see you go. Fenrir Warmaster is interesting, so the stats are getting swapped. It used to be a 3/4 that died and became a 3/2, and now it's a 3/2 that dies and becomes a 3/4. So, hmm. It's worse against Dispel, That's probably the first thing to mention. Now it just dies cleanly to Chromatic Cold. It's just generally possible to trade up into Fenrir Warmaster, which used to be just totally untrue. It's also sort of hilariously very slightly better against Magma AoE, in the sense that Anachronize now kills it into its bigger form, and Plasma Storm does the same. But generally, I think this is a nerf. It's also better to Keeper, which I've seen some people playing Keeper in Vanarch because they have lots of powerful minions that you might want to copy. It's better with Keeper. Probably still not something you're like super excited to Keeper, but not nothing. I think it's probably still going to be played in all Vanarch decks, but it will be less extreme how sort of much tempo it gets you for sure, and I think that's probably a good thing. So yeah, the devs, well, one of the devs, Bladham, was talking about this in the Discord, where he was like, I've wanted to just sort of experiment with Fenrir Warmaster stats. This seemed like a good time to do it, because Vanarch was quite strong, and this is probably a nerf. And so yeah, here we are. We're experimenting. We'll see how it goes. I wouldn't be shocked to see if we just keep this. But yeah, I can't tell the future, so we'll find out together. So Time Cloak Coiler. This is a very small nerf. It is going from a 2/5 to a 2/4. Still 3 mana. At the end of your turn, give your general +2/+0 until they move or teleport. So this card is like sort of the reason behind Fatigue Magma as an archetype. You could just sort of stand still and then stack up buffs, and now your opponent can't kill you. If you stand on a green tile, they really can't kill you. But they can't kill you because instead of a 2/3 minion doing 4 damage to your general over the course of 2 turns, it'll only do 2 damage. So, like, minions just become much less lethal, and they're generally how games of Duelyst end, is repeatedly slapping people with minions. And so stalling that out by making the repeated not happening was really propping this archetype up. And I mean, Time Cloak Coiler is still fantastic. It's still incredible. It just dies to slightly more removal now. It dies to Cryogenesis. It dies to Mercantor Warbeast. That's really it on the 4 to 5 breakpoint. It dies to a general hit plus like a Tempest, or like Riftwalker plus Riftwalker, or Riftwalker plus Tempest. Just like slightly more accessible to kill. I don't think this hurts Fatigue Magma too much. I think the Walls nerfs actually are quite nice for Fatigue Magma, because many Walls decks were quite bad against the deck, and also were really keeping down other decks that might want to combat Fatigue Magma on the like axis of being slow and inevitable. So I'm pretty sure this doesn't mean that Fatigue Magma is the best deck. If it's the second best deck, I mean the best deck gets nerfed, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, hopefully it isn't, because Fatigue Magma is unpopular. They're nerfing it in response to community feedback they've received. So Isby's Monument, this is a change I'm very excited for. Instead of getting -0/-2 and healing people for 2 at the end of each turn, it gets -0/-1 and heals everyone for 1. And this is interesting because in a lot of the decks that played Isby's, they'd play it to basically just stall, right? Like, I don't want to kill you, so healing you doesn't matter, and I want to stay alive as long as possible. I'm a Fatigue Magma deck, you know, I just want to heal up as much as I can. And this nerfs that use of it because it's healing you for less. It does last longer, so, I mean, like, theoretically, if it sticks for 6 turn cycles, it'll still do the same thing, but that's not super common. Especially with healing, you often want it to be quite quick, quite immediate. You want it now so that you don't die to, like, the 3rd spiral technique, or whatever. But this is a big change for a deck that I really like. It's called Heal Satan, but I mean, it's just sort of a twist on Heal Ionar, which is a deck many of us know and love. So you play all the healing synergy cards, which is Light Chaser and Sunriser. You play, you know, the heals, Healing Mystic, Sundrop, sometimes Rejuvenator, although Rejuvenator's fallen out of favor a bit, and Isby's. And Isbi's in particular has a massive amount of synergy with the heal trigger cards because it is 2 heals. Each general is being healed. And so Sunriser becomes 4 damage AoE, which, as we know from Holy Immolation, is pretty good. And Light Tracer gets 4 attack every turn cycle. So like when you press end turn, it's a 5-4. When they press end turn, it's a 9-4. And so Heal Satan also plays Magnetize, which lets it backline Light Chasers or Sunrisers. And then in the future, once they've in Light Chaser's case, once it's gotten a lot of power, you can bring it in and kill people with it. Or in Sunriser's case, you can backline them to keep them safe, and then play an Isbi's and like do a 6 damage AoE on that turn. And Heal Satan really prefers this, because it heals your opponent for less, which is good, because you are trying to kill them, which is not true of all Isbi's decks. And it sticks around longer, so instead of you throw 1 Isbi's away, and now you have 3 turns with which to stack up your heal synergies and get value out of them, now you have 6 turns, which is way better. So Isbi's nerf is sort of, it is a nerf for use cases where you're just a control deck trying to live as long as possible, but it's quite a big buff for a deck I quite like, and so I'm excited for it. Spectral Blade heals a general for 2 now, rather than healing them for 1. So this is a revert. I can't remember when it got nerfed, but it's like 6 months ago or more. Spectral Blade got nerfed from heal 2 to heal 1, and it mostly disappeared. You could still play it, and it was relatively inoffensive, but it used to be a sort of core part of the Abyssian early game. And the Abyssian early game was quite, I don't want to say oppressive, but it was very good at sort of staving off aggression, and Abyssian historically was one of the stronger late game factions with Spectral Revenant and Shadow Nova. And I think Abyssian is still quite strong in the late game with like Elder Chain Deja Vu stuff, or if you're trying to do the Synchronic Abomination combo. And so the Spectral Blade buff means that it's going to be much more playable in those sorts of decks. I think it will go in most Abyssian decks again, and it will just be a great bridge to get from the early game into the late game. You'll have 3 more health or 2 more health per game where you play Spectral Blade, and more if you play multiple. So pretty good stuff. There's something else I wanted to say, which is that like this is sort of like you can see that throughout this patch that like aggressive decks have been hit quite hard. So maybe a more mid-range Duelyst is on the horizon, which I mean, we'll see how that goes. Horn of the Forsaken is an interesting one, because it used to be completely different. It used to be when your general deals damage, summon a Wraithling on a random nearby space, nearby to your general, something like that. Well, the Wraithling definitely was nearby your general. And now it's whenever an enemy nearby your general is destroyed, summon a Wraithling on its space. Enemy. This is important. Many people in the Discord have misread this card and assumed it is whenever a unit. It's not. It is enemy. I think that this is probably a nerf. I'm not sure. It's hard to evaluate. It's very different. Your general doesn't need to like lose durability on this to make Wraithlings, but I don't think you're actually getting... You're not actually standing next to that many minions that die as the Abyssian general. Many enemy minions that die as the Abyssian general. Usually people are sort of keeping them away from your swarm if you're playing swarm, because they don't want to feed you Deathwatch triggers. So it's a little funky. It's good with Grasp, but that's Grasp of the Undying, the like give a thing Dying Wish 3 damage AoE. But even then, like I think you're printing like 2 Wraithlings, 3 Wraithlings if you're really lucky. Which, I mean, that's good, but it's a lot of work, and you have to hope your opponent is playing a deck that is vulnerable to Grasp and doesn't play around it. So yeah, questionable stuff. I don't think Horn was good before, and I don't think Horn is good now, but maybe this paves the way for some sort of Horn change in the future that's actually useful. Illick's Stormblade is gone from an 8 mana 8/9 to a 7 mana 7/7. So this is a big change, because giving a unit celerity this turn, its opening gambit, is a very powerful effect. And being able to play it earlier is good, and being able to play it alongside something like a Martyrdom is also very relevant. So I'm most excited for this alongside Heal Satan stuff, where you can give a Light Chaser celerity and really kill people. That seems a bit greedy, but I'm going to try it. I know people like Zowie have long loved really greedy Lionar decks that have that can kind of struggle to kill people, and giving a minion celerity is a good way to kill people. Especially with like Divine Bond or whatever, you can Divine Bond a second son and then hit someone for 32. Although that is, a 9 mana combo. Is Divine Bond 9 mana, 2 mana now? I think it is. Whatever. Uh, Fact check me in the comments. And yeah, I think this Elix Stormblade was really, really bad when it was an 8 mana 8/9. Partially because the meta was quite hostile to playing 8 mana cards, and partially because I just don't think it was very good. And now, hopefully, the meta is less hostile to playing this kind of card, and it's clearly significantly better. So yeah, let's see how this goes. Jaxi. It becomes a 3/1 rather than a 2/2. This is good. 3 attack is a lot more than 2 attack because it means you trade with 2/3s, which is the sort of most common minion stat line. It means that it plus your general is 5, which is a nice number. Kills pre-nerf Time Cloak Coiler, among other things. And the downside is that it goes from 2 health to 1 health, which isn't super relevant because generals have 2 attack, and they're one of the main ways that minions take damage. It's just pings. Riftwalker is 2 damage, another way that minions take a lot of damage. It's just pings like Blood Tear Alchemist or Spirit Harvester that really hurt Jaxi now. And Jaxi was already pretty vulnerable to them because it turns out that Jaxi dies into a 1/1. So it only really matters if you're playing against like Blood Tear plus Void Pulse turn 1 and stuff like that, which, well, sucks. They're spending more resources than you are, Seems like a win to me. So, I think this is a pretty huge Jaxi buff. I will say it's worse with First Wish. That's a real criticism. On the other hand, it is much better with Syzygy because it is now able to get buffed up to a 3/4, which is a much better stat line than 2/5. So, you win some, you lose some, Zuvet. And I think this card is better in Zooey Vet decks now because it's a much stronger turn 1 that buys a lot more space. Crazed now costs 1 mana if you have 9+ mana crystals. The plus is interesting because currently, well, actually we knew that already, but still interesting, worth noting. Maybe we can get more mana crystals later. But now it costs 1 mana at 9. So I was like spoiled on this change, technically, in the sense that Crazed DM'd me. This is a backer card by the backer Crazed. Crazed DM'd me, talked about it for a bit. I'm not sure this is enough to make Crazed useful, because a 4 mana 5/5 isn't like awful or anything, but it's not super exciting, and not many Duelyst games get to 9 mana, as a matter of course. It's not like rare, but it's not common. Less than half, I think, easily. So this is a vanilla in games where that doesn't happen. But a 1 mana 5/5 Veil Frenzy is really strong. A lot of factions can do some silly things with it. Vet quite likes cheap minions because it can Inner Oasis them, and it can flood the board so that it's setting up for Time Maelstroms, alongside the fact that Vet quite wants to play Time Maelstroms, and to do that, you need to be on 9 mana, which Crazed wants. I've seen some funny stuff where it turns out that if you stick a Mana Forger, then Crazed Maelstrom, Crazed Maelstrom is 14 damage, 15 if the Mana Forger hits. That's pretty good. If you have 2 Crazed, it very rapidly starts killing people. You can do things in Vanna with Spirit of the Wild. Gives them a really powerful AoE tool on 9 mana that'll also kill people. Magmar's obviously scary. They can Vindicate it, and then it becomes kind of like the Vindicated Grovekeeper, although I think that it being locked away behind getting to 9 mana first makes it less impressive. Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait and see on this one. I've said a lot about a lot of the changes this patch, but it's hard to evaluate Crazed in particular. I don't think it'll be good, but I wouldn't be shocked if I was wrong. So I think that's all the cards. We've got some backer icons I did not back, so these are not relevant to me. Some new skins, that's cool. Sunriser, hey, Heal Satan, like the green hair. Night Star Assassin, played card, good skin, seems cool. Dreamgazer, often another often played card. I'm a big fan of this skin because I don't really like the color palette of the Dreamgazer that currently exists, but it's nice to have options. Sunseer doesn't see play, Pumia doesn't see play, and Spelljammer is trans pride, so that's kind of awesome. But it's Spelljammer. So, you know, beautiful, but not gonna make an impact on many of my games, I imagine. New emote by CrackerCloud. That's pretty cool. I like how they just sort of yoinked someone from the Discord who made fan art and got them to do emotes. Um, yeah, I like it. I do think it's funny that Songhai gets to be Guess I'll Die, given that Songhai is usually the one Guess You'll Dying of the people. But, hey, that's life sometimes. I mean, some bug fixes. So Double Agent now is no longer bugged, hopefully. Well, I say hopefully, but I don't actually hope it, because that means I have to cut it from BugVet, which is sad. Not a fan. Here's another bug fix. You can, sign up to your email, even if it has capital letters. That's fine. And now, when you type in crab, you can find decapotheosis, because it turns out that people were not very good at remembering that card's name. Fair enough. There's a lot of letters there. So yeah, that's my patch review. Just sort of a rundown on all the cards. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I mean, let's see if I make more content or if this is the last video for a while. Who knows? Bye bye.